Imagine this, it's your wedding day, the day you've dreamed of for years, surrounded by love, joy, and promises of forever. But what if just hours after you walk down that aisle, your life shatters? What if the man you gave your heart to, the woman who raised you, betray you in the worst way possible on the day you trusted them most? What if in that moment all your hopes and dreams for the future evaporate and you're left with nothing but heartache and rage? Could you keep it together, or would you snap? Stay with me, because what happened next will make you question everything you know about love, family, and the shocking consequences of betrayal. Emily Carter was the kind of woman you couldn't help but admire. At 28, she had already carved out a successful career as one of Sydney's most sought-after event planners, known for turning the most extravagant weddings into flawless celebrants. Emily's attention to detail was unmatched. Her name was synonymous with perfection. Every event she touched seemed to shine a little brighter, feel a little more magical. She had a vision for everything, from grand floral arrangements to the smallest table setting. Nothing was ever out of place in Emily's world. But behind her poised exterior, Emily had been searching for something more. Love, like most women. She dreamed of a fairy tale wedding, a love that would sweep her off her feet. She had been hurt before, tangled in relationships that promised the world, but left her heartbroken. But when she met Ryan Matthews, everything changed. Ryan, 30 years old, was charming in every sense of the word. Tall, handsome, with a smile that could melt the coldest heart. He wasn't just a businessman. He was a man who made everyone feel special. He swept Emily off her feet at a charity gala, and from that moment on, she believed she had found her match. Ryan promised her a future of love and adventure. Emily's world seemed complete. They were engaged within months. The wedding was set to be the event of the year. But as Emily worked tirelessly to bring her dream day to life, there were cracks she couldn't see. Cracks hidden behind the perfectional, the smooth words of reassurance, and the seemingly endless promises of forever. Because sometimes even the most meticulously planned lives can be torn apart by the very people we trust the most. Ryan Matthews, handsome, charismatic, and successful, at 30, had already built an impressive reputation in Sydney's real estate world. With a smile that could charm anyone, and a presence that filled any room, he was the kind of man who made everyone feel like they were the most important person in the room. Emily wasn't the first woman to fall for his charm, and she certainly wouldn't be the last. But to her, Ryan seemed perfect. He was everything she had dreamed of, supportive, loving, and always eager to share his ambitions for the future. He was the kind of man who made promises offer ever feel real. He talked about building a life together, about traveling the world, and about creating a home filled with laughter and love. To Emily, Ryan wasn't just a partner. He was her dream come true. She had never felt more seen, more valued, and more loved. But as Emily would soon learn, Ryan wasn't as perfect as he appeared. Beneath the well-tailored suits, the expensive watch, and the charming smile, there was a darker side to him, a man with a pattern. Ryan's past was dotted with failed relationships, and whispers followed him wherever he went. Friends and business partners described him as a man with a tendency to manipulate, tuss others to get what he wanted. His charm, it turned out, was his weapon of choice. Though Ryan presented a life of luxury to Emily, his reality was far from it. He didn't own the sleek cars he drove or the penthouse he flaunted to his clients. His success was built on image, not substance, and beneath the surface, there were secrets that he was careful to keep hidden. Secrets that Emily would never suspect until it was too late. Linda Carter, Emily's mother, died at 52. She was a woman who had spent her entire life giving to others. A dedicated nurse at one of Sydney's busiest hospitals, Linda worked long hours to provide for Emily after a difficult divorce. She was the kind of woman who never took a break, always putting others' needs before her own. To Emily, Linda was a pillar of strength, her rock, her guiding force. She was here through every milestone, every success, every heartbreak. Linda had always been the one Emily could turn to, a constant presence in her life, a source of love and wisdom. They shared everything, the good, the bad, and the difficult. Linda was Emily's confidant, the one who encouraged her to chase her dreams. the one who wiped away her tears when things didn't go as planned. She was the perfect mother, or so Emily thought. But as Emily prepared for her wedding, Linda's behavior started to shift in ways that didn't make sense. At first, Emily thought it was just a sign that her mother was finally embracing life after years of hard work. Linda began to dress more stylishly, wearing makeup to family dinners and showing up at Emily's events with a newfound energy. She had started going to the gym, something Emily didn't remember her mom ever showing interest in before. Emily brushed it off, assuming it was just her mother finding joy in her own life again. But what Emily didn't know was that Linda had become entangled in something far more dangerous than self-improvement. While Emily was busy with wedding plans, Linda had been drawing closer to Ryan. She had begun attending his open houses, sending him messages, and showing up at places where she knew he would be. What started as innocent curiosity soon turned into something much darker. Linda had crossed a line she could never come back from, and Emily, in her excitement about her upcoming wedding, had no idea the woman she trusted most was about to betray her in the most unimaginable way. But as Emily walked down the aisle, her heart swelling with hope, her eyes locked on Ryan, her future husband, the man she believed would stand by her side forever. She had no idea that the person she trusted most, the one she had leaned in her entire life, was about to betray her in the most devastating way imaginable. Everything seemed perfect in that moment, too perfect, but in the back of her mind a quiet warning went unheeded. Emily had worked so hard for this day, so focused on making it flawless that she missed the cracks in the foundation of her own life, the cracks that would soon come crashing down around her. Little did Emily know, her happily ever after was about to turn into a nightmare, and the betrayal would come from the one person she never expected. As the photographer called Emily for some final shots, in the bridal suit, she smiled to herself, eager for a moment of peace before rejoining her guests. It was supposed to be a quiet, intimate moment with her new husband, a chance to take in the reality of what was happening, a dream fulfilled, a life about to begin. But as she stepped into the room, expecting to find Ryan waiting for her, perhaps adjusting his tie or offering them both a celebratory drink, she was met with something far worse. A scene that would break her heart forever, the very image of betrayal. A sight so horrific it would shatter everything she thought she knew about love, trust, and family. There on the couch was Ryan, the man she had promised her forever to, and beside him her mother Linda, the woman who had always been her rock, the woman she had trusted above all else. In that moment, everything froze. Emily couldn't breathe, couldn't move. Her world seemed to collapse around her as she tried to process what her eyes were seeing. Emily stood there paralyzed, her wedding dress feeling heavier with each passing second. The room, once filled with the promise of joy, was now a suffocating prison of heartbreak. There, in that moment, Emily saw Ryan and Linda in a compromising position, a betrayal so devastating, so twisted that it shattered her soul in an instant. The sight before her was something beyond imagination, something that no one should ever have to witness. It wasn't just the act itself that tore her apart. It was the realization that the two people she loved most, the two people she trusted beyond all others, had been deceiving her in the cruelest way possible. Right there, in the bridal suit of what was supposed to be the happiest day of her life, Ryan, her fiancé, the man who had promised her forever, was now a stranger. Linda, her mother, the woman who had raised her, was no longer the safe harbor Emily had always turned to. In that moment, Emily's world turned upside down. All dreams, all the hopes for a future built together collapsed in a heartbeat. The woman who had walked down the aisle full of hope was now crumbling under the weight of betrayal. She couldn't even scream. All she could do was stand there, frozen, watching the unraveling of her life. The sounds in the room, Ryan's panicked apologies, Linda's desperate attempts to explain faded into the background. Emily was drowning in the crushing reality of it all. And for the first time that day, the truth was unbearable, frozen, numb. Her mind couldn't process the reality of what was unfolding in front of her. The room felt like it was closing in, the walls pressing in around her. Emily stood there paralyzed. Her wedding dress, the one she had chosen with so much care, the symbol of her happiest moment, now suffocating her, each layer of fabric feeling like it was cutting off her breath. tightening around her chest. Her body trembled, but she couldn't move, couldn't speak, couldn't even form few words to scream. It was as if the shock had taken her voice and stolen her will to react. Her wedding, her dream was shattering into pieces. But all Emily could hear was the ringing silence in her ears. The words Ryan and Linda were speaking barely registered. They were like echoes in the distance, meaningless compared to the unbearable truth she was facing. The air in the room was thick, and the life she had spent years building crumbled in a matter of seconds. And then, in that moment of pure devastation, Emily did something that shocked the entire nation. She didn't walk away. She didn't run. She didn't scream or faint. She did something no one expected. No one saw it coming. Without hesitation, Emily reached for the gun Ryan kept for protection. A gun he had shown her once and warned her never to touch. But in that moment, all the warning signs, all voices telling her to stop, disappeared. The years of trust, of love, were gone, replaced by something far darker, a need for justice, a need to make them feel the pain she felt. In the silence that followed, Emily raised the weapon and fired. Without a word, Emily reached for the gun. Ryan kept for protection a gun he had shown her once and told her never to touch. But now, with the weight of betrayal pressing on her chest, that warning meant nothing. The rules they had once shared, the promises they had made to each other felt like a distant memory. All that mattered in that moment was the overwhelming rush of emotions, the heartbreak, the anger, the humiliation. Everything she had ever believed in had been ripped apart right before her eyes. She aimed it at both of them, the weapon an extension of the fury boiling inside her. There was no hesitation, no second thoughts, just the burning need to make them understand the gravity of their betrayal. Emily's eyes locked with Ryan's, and in that split second, everything that had been said between them, the love, the promises, the future vanished. She saw him for what he truly was, a man who had lied, manipulated, and used her trust as a weapon. And then her gaze shifted to Linda, her mother, the one who had always protected her, always been there until now. And then, in one swift motion, Emily pulled the trigger. 3 shots, 3 lives irrevocably changed. No one in that room had a chance to react. And as the echoes of the gunfire rang through the suite, the chaos outside the door began. Thegus at the reception, unaware of the nightmare unfolding upstairs, would soon find their night turned upside down. What had been a celebration of love, ultimately, of union, was now a scene of horror. 6 shots, 3 to Ryan, 3 to Linda. In a calculated, chilling moment, Emily executed them both. Her hands, once trembling with disbelief, now moved with a precision that shocked even her. There was no hesitation, no mercy. The weight of betrayal had stripped her of everything but raw, overwhelming emotion. And in that instant, Emily did what she felt she had to do, without a moment's pause. Emily turns to her mother. Linda, too, had been caught in the crossfire of her daughter's fury. The first shot to Linda's abdomen causes her to cry out in shock, her body recoiling in pain. She stumbles backward, clutching her side, her eyes wide with terror. The second shot, this time to her shoulder, sends her tumbling into the couch, a gasp escaping her lips. But even then, Emily doesn't falter. The third shot strikes Linda's leg, and she collapses, her blood staining the elegant fabrics around her. Emily's heart raced, but her mind felt numb. The fury, the pain, the shock. It all collided in a terrifying storm that left her without a clear thought. The wedding that was meant to symbolize love and joy now lay in ruins, its memory tainted by the blood spilled on the floor. The silence that followed was deafening. The kind of silence that only comes after something unthinkable has happened. The dreams, the promises, the future, they were gone, wiped away in a few heart-stopping moments. Therum, once full of excitement, now felt cold and foreign. A wedding had turned into a crime scene. A dream had turned into a nightmare. Emily's hands, no soaked in blood, trembled as she stood frozen in the hallway. The gun slipping from her grasp, her mind was still reeling. Her body moving on instinct as realization of what she had just done began to settle in. The screams came. Then, guttural, primal, piercing the silence of the once joyous evening. It was a sound that seemed to come from someone else, someone broken beyond repair. And yet it was her own voice unraveling with the weight of what had just unfolded. The sound of her voice was the only thing that seemed real. The reality of the gunshots had faded in Thea's stance, muffled by the shock of her actions. But the sharp cry of Emily's anguish cut through the air like a blade. The guests at the wedding, still unaware of the nightmare unfolding upstairs, began to stir. Some thought the loud cracks of gunfire were nothing more than fireworks, an odd, perhaps barely timed surprise added to the celebration. But as the minutes passed, the confusion grew. The heavy footsteps of security guards approached, followed by the sounds of more panicked voices. It didn't take long for the first guest, a man named Robert Chen, to open the door of his hotel room. Drawn by the noise and the unmistakable scent of something wrong, the sight that greeted him in the hallway was nothing short of horrific. Robert, still in shock, stammered out his call to 911, his voice frantic, shaking. There's a woman in a wedding dress. There's blood everywhere. Please, you need to hurry." The operator's voice, calm yet urgent, asking for details, was the only thing that seemed to bring him back to reality. The chaos that followed was almost surreal. The security team, followed by officers, arrived within minutes. They rushed to the scene, but the sight that awaited them would haunt them forever. A bride, once full of life and promise, now sitting among the wreckage of her dreams, her hands drenched in blood, unable to process what she had just done. The guests who had heard the shots, still confused, began to realize something had gone terribly wrong. Panic spread quickly through the hotel. The music cut off abruptly, and the lights brightened, revealing the full extent of the horror that had unfolded just above them. Emily, the bride, who had dreamed of this day for so long, now stood at the center of a nightmare. A single moment, a devastating betrayal, had taken everything away from her. And as the police arrived and the chaos unfolded, it was clear her life and the lives of everyone involved would never be the same again. The sirens cut through the night air as police vehicles screeched to a halt outside the Ritz-Carlton. Officers rushed into the building, moving swiftly through the hallways, guided by the frantic 911 call. What they found when they reached the bridal suite was nothing short of pure devastation. Emily, once the picture of grace and joy, was now a shell of herself. Her wedding dress, the symbol of her perfect day, was drenched in the blood of those she loved most. Her hands, trembling and soaked in crimson, hung limply by her sides. Emily didn't resist arrest. She didn't scream. She didn't cry out for help. She simply stared blankly at the blood stains on her hands, as if she couldn't comprehend the enormity of what she had just done. It was a sight that would haunt the officers who had seen countless crime scenes in their careers. As the investigation unfolded, questions began to arise that no one could answer. Was this a crime of passion? A woman driven to the edge by the deepest betrayal? A heartbroken fiancé who snapped in the heat of the moment? Or was it something more deliberate, calculated even? Could Emily's heartbreak truly justify such an extreme response? Detectives focused on the gun, the weapon that had ended 2 lives in a heartbeat. Emily had been familiar with it, and yet the fact that she hadn't hesitated before using it only added to the chilling nature of the crime. Her statements, or rather her lack of them, left investigators wondering. Was she in control of her actions, or was she a victim of overwhelming psychological trauma? Was this the act of someone pushed beyond reason by betrayal, or was there something darker at play? The deeper they dug, the more disturbing it became. The affair between Ryan and Linda had been ongoing for months, hidden from Ryan, even Emily. But could this truly explain the violent act that followed? Was it possible that Emily, who had always been so composed, so in control, had finally cracked under the unbearable weight of betrayal? Or was this something that had been brewing for much longer? The case soon caught the attention of the media, and, like wildfire, it spread across every news outlet. Public was divided. Some hailed Emily as a hero, a woman who had been pushed to the edge by the 2 people she loved most, and in an explosive moment of fury, took matters into her own hands. She had every right to defend herself, they argued. She was betrayed by those she trusted, and Daniel would have done the same, but not everyone agreed. A large portion of the public labeled Emily a cold-blooded killer. someone who had let her emotions control her actions, someone who could have walked away, called it off, and walked away with her dignity intact, no matter how painful the betrayal. Murder is never the answer, they argued. She had a choice, and she chose violence. The media ran endless debates, armchair psychologists analyzing her every move, trying to determine whether she was a victim of trauma or a calculate murder. As the nation watched, opinions varied wildly. Some empathized with Emily, feeling her pain, while others condemned her, seeing her as nothing more than a woman who took her fate into her own hands, in the most tragic way possible. The case was no longer just a personal tragedy. It had become a national debate on love, betrayal, and justice. The trial begins, and the courtroom fills with a palpable attention. Emily's once shining reputation is now being dissected in front of a room full of onlookers, family, friends, and strangers alike, all eager to see how this tragic story unfolds. The prosecution, led by District Attorney Lawson, claims premeditated murder, pointing to the fact that Emily had time to think, time to walk away. But instead she chose to act. This wasn't a crime of passion, she argues. Emily had every opportunity to leave, to call it off. But instead she made a deliberate choice to end two lives in cold blood. Lawson impresses the jury, asking them to focus on the facts, Emily's clear and deliberate actions. The calculated way. She pulled the trigger 3 times into Ryan, then turned to Linda, methodically ending their lives. This wasn't the act of Simeon in shock. This was murder planned and executed. On the other side, the defense, led by her attorney, Simon Hayes, argues that Emily wasn't in control of her actions. She was driven to the edge by a betrayal so deep, so shocking that she couldn't process the trauma of what she had seen. Hayes presents a different narrative, a woman pushed beyond her breaking point by the people she loved most, a victim of overwhelming emotional devastation. The defense argues that Emily's mind broke the moment she walked into that bridal suit. The emotional blow of betrayal, seeing both Ryan and Linda together in such an intimate and painful way, was simply too much to process. They bring in experts who testify about the psychological impact of betrayal and the it takes on the human mind. They suggest Emily experienced a temporary dissociative episode, unable to grasp the severity of her actions in that moment. Just when it seemed the case would go one way, a surprise witness takes the stand. Ryan's ex-girlfriend, a woman named Angela Morris, steps forward. Angela, poised but visibly affected, claims that Ryan had a history of manipulating women close to his partners. She speaks candidly about her own relationship with him and the emotional toll it took. When she discovered Ryan was having an affair with her sister, Angela's testimony is nothing short of explosive. She talks about how Ryan had manipulated her into believing that his relationship with her sister was just a temporary lapse, and how he convinced her it was her fault for not understanding him. Ryan thrived on chaos, Angela says, her voice thick with emotion. He fed on the betrayal, and it wasn't the first time he did it to me, and now he did it to Emily. And then, in a twist no one saw coming, Emily's mother, Linda, asks to take the stand. Her attorney had fought to keep her off the witness list, knowing her presence could unravel everything. But Linda insisted she needed to face Emily. She needed to tell the truth. Linda's confession is heartbreaking. She admits through tears that the affair had been her choice, not Ryan's. She wasn't coerced. She wasn't manipulated. She had actively participated in betraying her daughter. I was selfish, she says, voice trembling with regret. I wanted to feel loved again. Wanted to feel special. Ryan made me believe that I deserved it, but I didn't. I betrayed you, Emily. Linda continues, describing how the affair had started innocently enough, but soon spiraled out of control. She admits that at first she had tried tone things, but Ryan convinced her to keep it going. I knew it was wrong. Beauty didn't stop. Her voice cracks as she turns to Emily. I never wanted to hurt you, but I did, and I'll live with that for the rest of my life. Linda's testimony changes everything. The jury now has to consider the possibility that Emily's actions were not just the result of personal betrayal, but of years of manipulation by Ryan, a man who not only deceived her, but played on the vulnerabilities of those closest to him. The courtroom is in shock. The twisted dynamics between mother-daughter and fiancé have become clear, and the path to justice is more complicated than ever. After 3 weeks of emotional testimony, the jury deliberated 4 hours, each member wrestling with the overwhelming complexity of the case. The courtroom was filled with a heavy silence, the weight of Emily's fate hanging in the air as the nation watched. Breathless, the jury's decision would not only define Emily's future, but also answer a question that had haunted everyone. Was Emily a victim pushed beyond her breaking point, or a murderer who had crossed a line from which there was no return? As the hours passed, it was clear that the deliberations were difficult. The case had divided public opinion, with some calling for Emily's compassion, others demanding justice for the lives lost. The jury was tasked with deciding whether Emily's actions were driven by pure rage or if they were the result of a deep, irreversible psychological back. Finally, the moment arrived. The jury filed back into the courtroom, and the room seemed to hold its breath. The foreman stood, paper in hand, his voice steady as he addressed the judge. The foreman read the verdict. In the case of Emily Carter, we the jury find the defendant guilty of manslaughter, but not premeditated murder. The jury concluded that Emily's actions were driven by trauma, by the unbearable weight of betrayal, and the emotional toll it took on her mind. It wasn't a cold, calculated decision to kill. It was a reaction, born of overwhelming psychological pain. Emily would face prison time, but not for life. As the judge prepared to issue the sentencing, the courtroom fell into a heavy silence once again. The prosecution's demand for maximum sentence had been denied, but that didn't mean Emily would walk free. Her actions had consequences, and the court could not ignore the lives lost. The judge's voice broke the silence, her words weighing heavily on the room. Emily Carter, for the crime of manslaughter, you are hereby sentenced to 10 years in prison with the possibility of parole after 6 years. The judge paused as if considering the tragedy that had led to this moment. This is a compromise, acknowledging both the victimization you endured and the consequences of your actions. Though the sentence was lighter than expected, it still carried the weight of years, 10 years behind bars, but a chance for parole, a glimmer of hope that one day she might walk free again. But for now, she would pay the price for the lives that were lost and for the shattered family that was left to pick up the pieces. The prison gates would close behind her, but the emotional scars she would never fully heal. The pain of betrayal, of losing both the love of her life and the woman who had raised her, would stay with Emily long after the prison doors closed. Her story was over, but it had entered a new chapter, one where the consequences of her actions would haunt her, no matter how many years it took to heal. This isn't just a case about betrayal, revenge, and punishment. It's a tragedy for everyone involved. A family destroyed, lives shattered, and a woman left to face the consequences of a single moment of rage. Emily's life, once filled with dreams of love and happiness, was torn apart by the actions of those she trusted most. Ryan Endland's betrayal set off a chain of events that no one could have predicted. And in the aftermath, there are now just a broken family and lives left in ruins. This story isn't just about a woman's rage. It's about the deep pain that can stem from betrayal and the lengths to which people will go when pushed to their breaking point. It's a reminder that sometimes the consequences of our actions can never be undone. What do you think? Was Emily justified in her actions? Could you have done the same in her shoes? It's easy to say what we would or wouldn't do from the outside, but the depth of betrayal Emily faced is something few of us will ever truly understand. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Let's talk about it. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss another shocking true crime story like this one. And stay tuned for our next video where we'll uncover another unthinkable betrayal that will leave you speechless. The truth is often more twisted than we can imagine, and I'll be right here to bring you the full story. Thanks for watching, and as always, stay safe out there, because sometimes the people you trust the most are the ones who can hurt you the deepest. Watching.